Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Billy Wilkinson. How you doing, buddy? Yeah, I'm good. You know what, Billy? You're muted, but it's all right. You look better than last time I saw you. It's okay. All right. So everybody, I realized that I did those posts earlier, and I was notified by Don a little while ago that the link that was on the post was dead. And so I know that we're going to be a very, very small group here tonight, but I'm going to forge right on. You people are the most important people in my world right now for the next 30 or 45 minutes. Andy Stocks, good to see you. I'm happy to see you all. And you know, tonight's discussion, hey, Jason, happy birthday to your son. Good to see you. Tonight's discussion, I would consider to be among the most important discussions that anyone could ever have who is trying to learn how to succeed in network marketing. Because if there is network marketing in Kannaway, because if there is a single most common challenge that people have, it is the challenge of not having a big enough, broad enough, accessible enough circle of influence to enable us to do the amount of enrolling that would make it look exciting to our next candidate. I mean, Bill, you've been around for a long time. Would you say one of the biggest challenges is that? That's a big one, isn't it? Yeah, this is a big one. And there's so little that is ever taught industry-wide about how to address that. And so this discussion tonight may be limited to just tonight, or this may be a couple or three nights discussions, because I really, really would like to help each of you develop the knowledge and the confidence and the certainty that you have the capacities to develop a candidate list that will allow you to populate whatever size distributorship you would like to build. And so first, I want, and by the way, if I say a single thing tonight that makes you not happy, or if I say anything that makes you say, well, wow, Randy, that sounds hard, understand this: we're all starting wherever we're starting. Something that might sound hard to you, if this is your first 2 months in the business, might not sound at all hard to Billy, who's been in the business for 7 years. And so understand that I'm speaking now to a group of people with a variety of different experiences. And there probably will be at least one thing I say in this session that you're not going to like, no matter who you are and what your experiences have been up until now. And so here is the first one. I'm periodically asked, who is my candidate? And I want to start right now by helping you understand who your candidate is not. So let's assume that you are a new Kannaway entrepreneur. You are a new Kannaway entrepreneur, and you have, as a new Kannaway entrepreneur, by definition, earned very little or no money yet. As a new Kannaway entrepreneur, if you're also new, not just to Kannaway, but to the direct selling industry, then that means that you've not made money in Kannaway, and you've not yet made money in the network marketing industry either. And so who is not your candidate? Your candidate is not someone who has earned money in the network marketing industry. I mean, that's the truth. And once again, I'll talk to Billy. And so Billy, you've been around this for a long time. In the last 8 years, how many times have you seen someone without network marketing experience successfully recruit somebody with network marketing experience? I mean, I can tell you in my own case, I'm 33 years into it, and the number comes up to zero, literally. And so the first thing we have to do is understand who is our candidate. We make ourselves eligible to enroll people who have current or past success in the network marketing industry when we have current or perhaps very recent past success in the network marketing industry. But we simply should not have on our candidate list people whose current or past experience in network marketing is more successful than our own. Because whether it's right or whether it's wrong, it doesn't matter if it's right or if it's wrong. Here's the truth: they will not tend to look to you as a source of information if they think that they know more about the business than you do. And so who is not your candidate? Your candidate is not someone who has been in the network marketing industry longer than you have, who has earned more money than you have in the network marketing industry. Okay? So we can just eliminate that set of people. Okay. Now, next, and I'm really, really careful with this. I'm like so careful with this. I value all people the same. I do. I really do. I value all people the same. Whether it be the next sick and suffering alcoholic that walks into the next AA meeting that I go to, whose life is in a turmoil in every respect, or if it's someone who's one of my counterparts at one of the affluent country clubs that I belong to, I value all people the same. All candidates, however, could not be viewed the same. And once again, the candidate that I have access to is going to be determined a little bit by me. And so let's assume for a moment that with 10 being, here we're talking about Someone who has steadily and consistently and forever earned something over $500,000 a year, $1 million a year. These are successful, wealthy people. 10, 10, 10. Okay. Guess who can appeal to a 10? The only one who can appeal to a 10 is a 10 plus. That's the truth. I'm not telling you this to discourage you. I'm telling you so that you don't waste your time, right? If on a scale of 1 to 10, my historic financial, business, and personal success is a 2, and that's okay, by the way, because we can't start from where we're not. We can start from where we are. And so if my past success is a 2, that's not something I should be discouraged about. That's something that I should be excited about, because it's a whole lot easier to grow from a 2 to a 3 than it is to grow from a 9 to a 10. And so I should be really, really excited about that. But if my past success in life, in business, generally, if my past success on a scale of 1 to 10 is a 2, do you know who I have access to? I have access to 1s and 2s. I do not have access to 3s until and unless what? Until and unless I become a 3. Once I become a 3, then I have access to 1s, 2s, and 3s. But I don't have access to 4s and 5s. And so that is why you'll see us spending so much of our time, investing so much of our time when we're going through preliminary trainings. We spend so much of our time focusing on personal growth and personal development, because our candidate list grows every time we grow. So when people ask me, Randy, how do you grow a candidate list? I can talk for hours and hours and hours, or I can make it this simple. Billy, Sue, Jim, Carol, Mitch, Don, whoever you are, do you want to have access to another category of person? Become an improved person. And just like that, we get access to an entire web of people that we didn't have access to last week. And so that's why I talk so frequently and so insistently upon daily disciplines, which, if acted upon daily, do what? They build character. It's why I spend so much time talking about the fact that we must learn, grow, develop, and become. Our becoming, in all likelihood, will precede our earnings. And that is one of the basic, simple truths of our business. And so, by the way, and again, please, 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 I hope you guys all understand, if you're a 1, that's not something to be discouraged about. It is something to celebrate and say, my gosh, this is the first chance somebody's willing to help me stop being a 1 and start being a 2. If you're a 7, you feel like you just bumped up against the ceiling, you don't know how to get past it. Well, be grateful for that ceiling, because we're ready now to help you understand what are the things that must occur in order for you to be able to reach those 8s, 9s, and 10s. And so the first thing I said, to understand who is our candidate, well, let's understand first who is not our candidate. Our candidate is not someone who has more network marketing experience or success than we have. That is not our candidate. Our candidate is also not someone whose past results in life are in a substantial way greater than ours. Now, if I'm a 3 and I have a candidate who is a 3.5 or a 4, that's reaching up, okay? And reaching up is okay, but I will only win when I reach up if I'm reaching up with one hand, I'm reaching up to my candidate, and with my other hand, I'm reaching up to my upline to help me interact with this candidate whose current successes are greater than mine. Because if I want to be able to, first of all, I'll just be dead candid with you, we'll be limited to 1 or 2 positions on my scale of 1 to 10. We'll be limited to 1 or 2. If I'm a 3, I might be able to positively influence a 5 if I bring my upline into the equation. I might. If I don't bring my upline into the equation, I'm highly unlikely to be able to influence anyone who's higher up that chain than I am. And so what I must be doing is 2 things. I must be constantly and forever never stopping my focus on growing, because remember this, it goes backwards too. If I used to be a 9, I had access to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7s, and 8s and my peer 9s. But if for some reason I've allowed myself to backtrack and suddenly I'm an 8, you know what? Now I've lost access to what was my prior peer group. If I continue to allow myself to backtrack for whatever reason in terms of personal growth and development and character development, development of skills and so on, if I stop being an 8 and I become a 7, well, then I lose access to all of the other 8s and all the other 9s. And so who is not my candidate? Someone who has greater past success and experience in network marketing than me, and someone whose past life's experiences are in a substantial way greater than mine. My candidate list will be limited to those whose past life successes are in the realm of my own. And if they're a tiny bit more than my own, then I can have access to them by engaging my upline. If I don't engage my upline, I will not have access to them. And so the greatest, most hopeful news that I have for every one of you, especially those who have not yet had your first big financial breakthroughs in life, is that it's easier to grow from a 3 to a 4 than it is from a 5 to a 6. It's easier to grow from a 5 to a 6 than it is from a 6 to a 7. And so I want my message to be one of encouragement and hope for every single one of you. I also want it to be a message that is one based in reality and fact and truth, so that we understand that sometimes we have to invest some time and effort and energy in this process of no longer being a 3 and trying to become a 4, not being a 4, trying to become a 5, because that then is what gives me access to the circle of influence that I need to maybe spring to go forward to the next great big business. Okay, now, Billy, is there anything I've said so far that you disagree with or you'd like to comment on? You know what? Just click your microphone on. Click your microphone on. Ask to unmute. There, I just asked you to unmute. Can you unmute?
There we go.
There we go.
Good evening, everybody. And
oops, I still don't hear you, Billy.
Can you hear me?
Try again.
Darn it.
Turn up the volume.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I got you now. So, Billy, please just comment on those first few concepts.
And it's not even a comment, and you're not wrong, because you covered it on the last thing you said. I've had Randy, in all the years I've been here, speak to 3 people that were out of my league in multi-level marketing. 2 out of 3 I obtained. 1 decided to do something different. But what I was hoping he was going to get to, and he waited all the way to the end, because you will run across people with more experience.
Of course.
Randy has made an open invitation. He has a phone number, an email, call him, text him. If I can be of assistance, that's fine. But I'm telling you, there ain't nobody that's got more than Randy at it. And I've used him on just a few occasions. So, Randy, I just wanted to back up what you're saying. You're absolutely correct. When it came to those, I went to you, if you remember, 3 years ago and 4 years ago. That's all I wanted to say.
Beautiful. Thank you. And so once again, this is encouraging news, because what Billy just said, if any of you would like me to talk to your candidate that you feel is a little bit out of your reach, bang, here I am. Here I am. And not, I can say this with a great degree of confidence, there is not a Kannaway brand ambassador on this session or anywhere else who's ever asked me for help and had me say, no, I'm sorry, I don't have time for you, or no, I'm sorry, you're not in the right place in the tree, or no, I'm sorry, whatever. That's just not true. And so we all have access to the support to get there. Okay, so now let's go on. Having identified who our candidate is not, then let's talk a little bit about who our candidate is. Well, a couple of simple thoughts. First of all, I have been unsuccessful in my life at ever convincing anyone they should do this business. I can convince someone to buy a product. I can convince someone to buy a value pack. I can convince someone to become an entrepreneur, but I cannot convince them to do the business. I can't. They have to want to do the business. And they have to want to do the business far more than I want them to do the business. And so one of the most simple lessons that I want so much for everybody to embrace this. We are looking for people who are looking. And so the whole nature of adding to our candidate list has to do with learning how to just poke and prod around a little bit, open our eyes, open our ears, talk a little less, listen a little more, so that we can discover what people are looking for. Because until and unless we start talking about what they want to talk about, as opposed to rushing towards them with something we want to talk about, then we're going to have a whole lot of blank stares, closed doors, and unresponsive people. And so since it's a business, we're looking for people who are looking. That is why whenever I interact with a person, by the way, for me, this idea of growing a candidate list, network marketing, Kannaway, is for me, it's more than something that I do. And people who don't know this business well could be confused by that. Have I lost my identity because I'm a Kannaway brand ambassador? No, I'm Randy Schrader, I'm Bosco's dad, I'm Samantha's husband, I'm a variety of things. But you really couldn't separate my Kannaway participation from my life. It'd be really, really hard, because it's intertwined. I mean, it would be like trying to pull a strand out of a quilt. You really can't do it. It's just interwoven throughout it completely. And so if I think back to just the last 2 or 3 days of the things that I've done to extend my own candidate list over just the last 3 or 4 days. So on last Thursday or Friday. I can't tell what the day was, last Thursday or Friday. I had the great experience because it was my little boy, the horrible experience because it was Mario World, of going to Universal Studios and standing in line for 3.5 hours to do a 15-second push button thing. I mean, it was the most absurd thing I've ever seen. But you know what happened as I stood there in that line, all around me, people were complaining and whining and bitching about the fact that they were staying in the line. And, it was so easy. It was so easy. All I had to do was smile at every frown. And by the time every one of those rides had gone by, I had a quality candidate. I had a quality candidate because it's interwoven into what I do. So people are standing in line for 2.5 hours, and I've got people 4 in front of me and 4 behind me, and on the switchbacks, I got people all over the place. And so really, really easy, not hard for me. When I see that a person is there like me with a child, if they're there with a child, whether it be a grandparent or a sibling or a parent or an aunt or an uncle, I know very much. I know that the person who is responsible for that child cares deeply for the child. And I know some of the things that they want for that child. And so all I needed to do was just wait for the periodic just a little gap. All I have to do is listen, not talk. Listen, 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 listen. And by listening, then pretty soon they would knock on my door. They wouldn't knock on my door by saying a darn thing to me. They would knock on my door by the husband saying to the wife, this has pushed our budget pretty tight. Or by the mom saying to the child, honey, I'm sorry, we spend all the money we can afford to spend. Or. There's it literally in every single line, each of which was a minimum of 1 hour long. There were 3 or 4 candidates waiting for me to tell them that I had a solution. But before I opened my mouth, I had to wait for them to tell me what the problem was. Now, that idea, folks, I just described, I have to wait for them to tell me what the problem is. The reason this business is so easy for me, or at least is remarkably easier for me than other people I observe, is because it has become interwoven into my whole life's experience. You couldn't separate me from my business. The two are one and the same. They come together. They don't really break apart. And so I'm talking to people today. I happened to be at Universal Studios 4 days ago, and I'm talking to those people knowing very, very well that 6 months or 10 months or 12 months from now, I'll want to enroll somebody. I know that. And I'm not talking to them today thinking that they're going to become a valid candidate for me tomorrow. So one of the things that I find so very, very challenging is that people want others to make decisions almost immediately. And then whenever I observe somebody who wants others to make decisions immediately, then I have to sometimes pause and smile and pat them on the back and say, well, did you make a decision immediately? My friend Mitch is on this session. I mean, Mitch, he's a good friend. I don't use that word lightly. Mitch is a good friend. Mitch looked at this business, talked about it, thought about it, considered it for, I think, 7 or 8 months. And then I remember his frustration when he'd been at it for about a week. And the first 4 people he talked to, he said he couldn't believe it. They didn't join him. No kidding. And at the end of a month, nobody had leaped all over themselves that they wanted to join him. Mitch, remember, it took you 7 months to decide this was something you want to do. And so we have to understand that each and every time we enroll a person, for me at least, that is the result of a sequence of events. That is a process. It is not a simple activity. It is a process, and that process is one that builds upon itself as we go forward. And so in terms of adding people to my candidate list, well, the first thing we did was went to Universal Studios and I added people to my candidate list. I mean, quite a few. I stood in line for a long time, and I've got lots of new, really, really good people on my candidate list that were not on my candidate list a week ago. Like literally 1 week ago, they weren't. And from there, what did we do? Well, from there, we went to San Diego, Rancho Santa Fe. And as most of you know, we have a home now in Rancho, we're still in Rancho Santa Fe, but I have at least because we live in Utah. It's kind of silly to have an expensive property sitting there without a tenant in it. So we have the home lease. And so when we go there, we stay with my son, Blake. And so went to stay at my son, Blake's house, and Blake has some interest in doing some refurbishing in his property. Wants to rebuild some things that need to be done. And there's some work that needs to be done to kind of spruce it up and bring it up to standard for the neighborhood that he's in. And so we started talking to vendors. And you know what, in talking to vendors, once again, all I had to do, so the person comes over that's going to do drywall, the person comes over that can raise the ceiling, the person comes over that can fix the pool, the person comes over, go through this whole list of things, the person comes over that can replace the single pane glass with double pane glass. Every single person that came over, every single one, before the session, before they left, had expressed an interest in receiving at least that first link, or if it was too soon to do that, which is more likely for me, too soon to do that, every person walked out of the door with a little bit of interest, and whether or not they knew it, they had been added to my candidate list. Why? Because I waited until they told me their problem. And so the pool guy told me his problem. What was the problem? Not been able to get help. Clear after the COVID days, he hasn't got guys showing up to help him. And so he couldn't even start the project for 90 days. Why? Because he hasn't got help. Well, he hasn't got help and he's not making money because he can't take jobs. Just like that, he was knocking on my door. Just like that. He didn't know he was knocking on my door, but he was. And so right after I talked to the pool guy, I went and I made myself a few notes about that interaction, and on it goes. Another way to think of this adding to our candidate list on a regular, steady, daily, never-ending basis is I have this simple thought. Every single place that I spend money must create a candidate, because if it does not, then I will simply find somebody else with whom to spend that money next time. And that's the way that it is. I have no emotional attachment whatsoever to my dental hygienist. I mean, none. Somebody else can clean my teeth. If my dental hygienist was not on SmartShip, you know what? I would have a different dental hygienist very next time I got my teeth cleaned. If I'm spending money, I am getting a candidate out of it. And if I'm not getting a candidate out of it, then I'll refocus where I spend that money. And so I would suggest that all of you go back through your checkbook and go back through your credit card statements, identify every single place that you spent money in the last 90 days, and now look at it differently. Look at it and say, all right, here's all these ways that I spent money. These are all people who I supported in their business, in their endeavor. Why did I choose to support them? Is it because they have a special talent or a special skill? Is it because I appreciate their attitude and their energy? What is it about this person that caused me to want to support them? Might that give me a reason? If I wanted to support them, then might that make them likewise a valuable contributor and participant in my business now and today? And so then with the very next interaction with that person, I give them a chance to knock on my door. I don't say to them, no, Justin, you can't be my landscaper unless you use my salve. I don't do that. I wait until Justin complains about the fact that he can't get people, and that's why the trees are all down. I wait until somebody tells me the problem. And see, that takes patience. That takes patience. Patience is hard. One of the challenging things is to develop the discipline to act constantly, always, and forever, to act always with urgency, but to respond always with patience. The very moment my candidate feels urgency from me, the candidate will slam on the brakes and it will go no further. When the candidate instead feels from me no urgency whatsoever. And the fact is, I am not in a hurry for when my next candidate joins me. Why? Because I have so darn many candidates. I have enough people in the funnel that I'm not concerned about who joins me next. If I've only got one or two candidates, then I could fall into the trap of being concerned about that. And now, Billy and Sue, you've turned your lights back on so I can see you. So Billy and or Sue, I'm going to pause again for just a moment and just ask for your comments, thoughts, and feedback on those thoughts. So you muted again. I'm going to ask to unmute. There we go. I just asked.
Sorry, it's the first time on a phone. I'm always on a computer.
You're doing good.
The only thing I will comment on, and tonight I vowed myself that I wanted to hear Randy's versions of all these things tonight. But since you're asking, I will tell you that a sense of urgency, Sue said it to me yesterday, 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I was talking to an individual, and guys, I've been in and out of taking care of personal things for the last month. And I mean, I've really been off the net and it's killing me. But I found somebody and I was talking to somebody, and I turned around and I was pushing towards the fact. Well, I don't do that normally. It's not a push. And since I did, they were supposed to sign on this morning at 9 o'clock and get back with me again, and did not do so. And I haven't heard from him again. And Sue turned around and she said, do you know, I heard it in your voice that you were going more for making them aware of how beneficial this was going to be their business, when it was you making that decision and not them. Randy, you're exactly right. Don't push. Don't. Right. Sorry, that's all I got.
Thank you. You know, folks, I wish that there was a new mistake that any of us could dream up. I promise you, there's not. There are new people making old mistakes, and there are old people making old mistakes. And there is no one in this session who is ingenious enough to figure out a new way to screw it up. And so since that's the truth, what we all must be willing to do is just find a path, Find a path that has been proven to work. And then I, by the way, am perfectly willing to accept the periodic critique that I get. I want it. I can't get better if I don't accept critique. And one of the areas where I am sometimes criticized is that I am so resolute in that there is a way to do this. Okay, well, no. So let me rephrase this. There is a way that I choose to do it, but there are multiple ways that it can be done, right? Our personalities are not all the exact same. We don't all want the very same thing. We're not all in the same place in life. And so it's not that we all must do the very same thing. It is that if you want your outcomes to mirror my outcomes, then I think you should probably try to get as close to what I do as is possible. But there's a lot of really, really good positions between earning nothing and earning $1 million a year. There's lots of good spots between the typical Kannaway brand ambassador and the spot where I live. And so please, none of you, please know this. I want to help you accomplish what you want to accomplish. And if you can accomplish what you want to accomplish without doing anything that conflicts with what I teach, I will do everything I possibly can do to help you do it. If things conflict, then I'll cheer you on, wish you well. I'll watch carefully and closely. And as soon as you prove that what you want to do works better than what I do, then I will copy it. I'll do my best to make it slightly better. And then I'll say it was my idea. That's what will happen. And so there is absolutely and exactly no ego investment in this thing. I want what you want. I want for you what you want for you. Okay. So now the next thought, and this idea of growing and expanding a candidate list. I said a moment ago that if I'm spending money, so now let me broaden that a little bit. Let me make it a little bit more specific. Many of you have heard me teach this before, and some of you have not. When my antenna are up, I guess that's what I would say, is that my antenna are up. And my antenna are up, it means that I'm able to pick up the vibration or the energy or whatever you want to call it of the next person who really wants to go somewhere and do something. And I look for that when I'm looking for anything that I want to buy. And so, for example, I don't happen to be wearing one of them today, but quite frequently when I teach this lesson, I intentionally wear an article of clothing that I bought when I recently intentionally went out to get a candidate. Not always, but quite frequently in advance of a Kannaway corporate function. Not always, but most usually, I will buy a new suit, or maybe I will just buy a couple of new shirts, or maybe I'll buy a new tie. It would be really, really easy for me to fall in the trap that almost all of society has fallen into. I could just get online. I could go to Amazon and I could click buy and have them ship it to me, or I could go to neimanmarcus.com or Saks or Versace or whatever it is. I could click buy and have it shipped to me. And then I could try on what I wanted to try on and put what it didn't fit in a box and send it back and never have any interaction with anybody, right? Not talk to anybody. That's what our whole society has turned into. And it is at great, great, great peril. Instead of that, if tomorrow I wanted to buy a maroon sweater because I want to match Billy and Sue when I show up at the next event. So if I want my maroon sweater, say, and then what I would absolutely not do, I promise you, I would not there is nothing you could do to cause me to get online and buy that sweater and have it be shipped to me. I mean, chop off my fingers before I push click on that, because it's not going to happen. So what I would do instead is I would identify the handful of shops that I know would offer the article of clothing that I'm looking for. And then I would go shopping, but I wouldn't go shopping for the article of clothing. I already know what I want. I would go shopping for the person. And that's what I do. The first thing I could do that would be most devastatingly wrong would be to get online and just click buy. The next thing that would be almost equally wrong is I could just go into the store and make no eye contact, and I could treat the person who's helping me like they're subservient to me and that I'm all that, not make eye contact, not care about them. I could rush in and buy what I want and rush back out. That would be the next worst thing I could do. And now I've just put myself in the category of 85% of all people who buy anything. Or what I could do instead is I could go and I could wait and watch for the person who provides an extraordinary service. And once that person's up, so really, if I have to go to 5 stores, if I have to go to Hugo Boss, and now I have to go to Neiman Marcus, now not the right person, and I go on to Nordstrom, however many I've got to go to until somebody has that spark, until somebody's got that vibration, until somebody steps it up and behaves like they are more than their job. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody who behaves like more than their current occupation. And when I find somebody who behaves like more than their current occupation, then that's the person that I engage with. And by the way, there's actually an art to this, and you can no such thing as doing it wrong. Really, no such thing as doing it wrong, because we have to be willing to do it wrong before we'll ever do it right. So doing it wrong is actually part of the process. We should never be discouraged about difficult experiences as we begin trying anything that is new. But so now, because as I said, almost a bit of an art form, what I've come to realize is that I have to turn the conversation. It must turn into them. The conversation cannot stick around me. The conversation must turn to them. And so most frequently, if I'm going to buy an article of clothing, it's not unusual if it's a good salesperson, and that's an example, an article of clothing. If it's a good salesperson, oh, what kind of an event are you going to be going to? What's the purpose, right? That's the first way I know. Are they a good salesperson? Do they actually care? Or are they trying to sell me something? What is the purpose? What's the nature of the event? The good ones separate themselves from the ones that I'm not looking for in their first couple of minutes of conversation, first couple of phrases, they've separated themselves. And so now I've got to make it about them, not about me. And so most frequently, when I'm doing what I'm describing right now on an intentional basis, I take Bosco with me. Why do I take Bosco with me? Because Bosco is an attention grabber, and because Bosco is a conversation starter. 100% chance. And so what is that? You say, wait a minute, Randy, are you telling me you're trying to monetize your 6-year-old? Yes, the little booger costs me money. He's got to make me money. This is the way it is.
14 grandkids.
and so I take Bosco with me, and by taking Bosco with me, that just knocks all the edges off everything. And the magic to it, though, is if I take Bosco with me, I am going to find out if the person I'm talking to, whether it be a mortgage broker or a banker or a real estate agent or a nurse or a doctor, if Bosco is standing beside me, I'm going to find out if they have a child that is in the age of Bosco. And I will find that out for sure. If they've got a 4, 5, or 6-year-old child, I'm going to find out about it. I'm going to see their picture here in about 90 seconds. If they don't have a child that is about Bosco's age, then I'm going to hear memories about when their child was Bosco's age. 100% chance, not 90, 100% chance. If I'm doing it the way that I've described, if I'm doing it by first looking for the person who was vibrating a certain way, looking for the person who said, what's the nature of the event you're going to? That person is going to be in a couple of minutes. They're showing me the picture of their little boy or their little girl. And then because 50% of the time, 50% of the person I'm interacting with is a woman. It took me years to learn how to successfully navigate so that it did not appear that I was hitting on her. And why did it take me years to learn how to successfully navigate? Because for years, that's what I was doing. I mean, it was ingrained behavior. It took a long time to eliminate that ingrained behavior. And so now I've got Bosco beside me, but then I open up a picture of Bosco and I and Samantha. Because now if I'm showing this gal a picture of my wife and I'm standing with my little boy, now the odds of her thinking that I'm hitting on her when I compliment her, affirm her, tell her she's great, then I've disarmed that. But if I don't think this through a little bit, then 50% of my interactions are going to go nowhere because the women are all going to think that I'm hitting on them, because that's what's going to happen. 90% of the men that are complimenting a woman are hitting on them. And so I've got to separate myself from that 90%. Okay. All right. So now I've got Bosco beside me. And I found out that this is one actually beautiful example. A young man named King. King, this has been a forever situation for me, but King was working at Neiman Marcus. I'm going to say this is 3 years ago, maybe even 4 years ago. Well, no, Bosco was 3, so it was 3 years ago. And so I went to Neiman Marcus, and it was in advance of the Kannaway convention. And when I went, I knew exactly what I was going to buy. I was going to buy a Stefano Ricci tie. I'd already been online to see the Stefano Ricci tie that I wanted. I knew exactly what I wanted. But of course, now the last thing that I would do is buy it online. So what I did was I knew where I could find it, and I went to Neiman Marcus. And Neiman Marcus was not the first store I went to. I went to 2 or 3 others, and the ties were there. That's not what I was looking for. I could buy the tie anywhere. I didn't go looking for the tie, but I waited until King showed up. And I'm very intentional also in what I do. King is an extraordinarily sharp, articulate, young, I'm going to say now he's probably 32 years old, young African-American guy. And it will come when it comes, but I've been searching for that guy, right? I'm intentional in my recruiting. And so when when I looked and looked and looked, and then here was King, a very articulate, sharp, well-dressed, groomed, handsome guy. And as soon as he met Bosco, he told him that he had a little boy who was just 6 months younger than Bosco. And so at that moment in time, what did we do? Well, we opened up the telephone and we showed him pictures of the petting zoo that I built for Bosco when Bosco turned 1. You know, here is many goats, and here's many donkeys, and here's his 30 chickens, and here's his bunnies. And then I waited for what? I waited until King said, you know, I'd do anything, Randy, to do that for my little boy. Boom, he just knocked on my door. And so now I've got the guy whose vibration was right, his energy was right, he was perfect, he had a need, he knocked on my door. I could make the obvious mistake and say, great, let's meet for coffee tomorrow. You're gonna be perfect at this. What's your credit card number? No, I didn't even talk to him again for 6 weeks. 6 weeks, folks. Patience is a part of building a candidate list. 6 weeks later, I stopped back in and say, King, your face and image have popped into my mind so many times since I was here. I remember the look on your face when you said how much you'd like to do for your little boy what I've done for mine. I stopped back over to tell you that I've got a project that might do that for you. If you'd like, I can send you a 3.5-minute video link. Would you like me to do that? Now, Billy, what is he going to say? There is only, yes, it's exactly what he's going to say. And he's going to receive and review the link with eager anticipation of what's in it for him. That's what he's going to do. He's going to receive it and review it with eager anticipation of what's in it for him. And now, you know what? That was 3 years ago. Bosco was 3, and now Bosco is 6. King is coming to my Las Vegas business presentation on Tuesday this coming week. Now he lives in Las Vegas. He still hasn't joined me. But you know what? This is a process. It's not an event. I'm still looking for him. And maybe now his time is right. I believe the reason he didn't join me then is just because his timing was not yet right. Maybe now his timing is. Well, man, that was a long, drawn out, and potentially boring story about me adding one candidate to my list 3 years ago who hasn't joined me yet. But it's because I add 3 or 4 or 5 candidates to my list every day, day after day after day after day after day after day after day. And I don't have to concern myself with who's about ready to fall out of the bottom of the funnel. Because if I put enough people into the top of the funnel day after day after day after day after day, if I just don't ever quit doing that, then sooner or later, no matter how poorly I've done it, no matter how badly I've screwed it all up, sooner or later, somebody's going to arrive at that point of personal impasse in their life where they need to do something different, and they will then reach out to me. Okay, next thing you folks all need to know is this. If we were today in a vehicle, car, we were driving down the road and our vehicle ran out of gas, the first thing we would do is question our planning, right? And so right now, if you don't have a candidate, if you've been involved in Kannaway for 6 months or more and you don't have a great candidate to call and talk to right after this session, then I would feel a little bit like when I run out of gas on the highway and I say, what was I thinking? Why did I set off on this road trip without having some gas in my vehicle? You see, if every day for just 6 months, and it's not a long time, 6 months goes by like this. If every day for just 6 months, we realize that instead of it being like a can of gas where we dump something into the top of the funnel and something comes out of the bottom of the funnel in less than a second, when instead of that, it's every day, day after day after day, we put this, you see. In our business, it's not like putting a can of gas into a funnel. It's instead like putting a drop of honey into a dry funnel. And we all know this reality. If you got a dry funnel, completely dry, and you put 1 drop of honey over here in the top of the funnel, when is it going to come out? Never. You know, what if we get all excited about Kannaway? We get involved in our first 30 or 60 days. We introduce 7 or 8 or 9 people or 10 people to the business. When's it going to come out? Never. What if about once every 6 months we get all excited because Billy and Sue are coming to town, or Randy is, or Lennon is, somebody is, Tony is. We get all excited. We put 3. When's it coming out? Never. But what if day after day after day after day? What if every day, no matter what else happened? What if as surely as the sun comes up tomorrow, over the course of tomorrow, I'm going to live my life so that I interact with no fewer than 3, and my target being 6 people. Every time I have that interaction, I'm putting a drop of honey into the top of the funnel. You know what? If you put 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or even 1 drop of honey into the top of the funnel every single day for the next 6 months, then notwithstanding any other inefficiencies and ineffectiveness, things will start falling out of the bottom. The challenge is, and people hear me talk about this so frequently, is the sporadic behavior. Doing quite a bit for 3 or 4 days and then nothing for 6 weeks. Doing quite a bit for another 2 or 3 weeks and then doing nothing for 6 months. What does it produce? It's not that it produces nothing. What it produces is worse than nothing, because what it produces is a terrible, horrible, sticky mess up here. Nothing's come out of the bottom, but all of your great candidates are saying, are you still doing that? Is that working for you? Well, not really. And so you see steady daily consistency. Now that becomes easy to do if, as I've described, Kannaway has become kind of woven into your life like a thread in a quilt. You couldn't really pull it out. Well, then all day, every day, as I'm living my life, I am building a candidate list. I'm going to pause again here, Billy, and just ask for your thoughts, comments, input, agreement or disagreement. Any of the above is all okay.
You know, let me log in. Hang on.
We got you. Oops, can't hear you. Had you a second ago. Asked to unmute. Try it again. Unmute, unmute.
No, it's the phone. I'm learning. No, I think exactly what you're saying is true and online. It's building that list consistently every day is what makes the difference. And you're right. It's not like gas going through the funnel. It's like honey going through a comb. It takes time. And the more you add each and every day, and that's what Sue and I really try to do. We try to add people consistently that we're going to talk to. And while it normally does take, I don't usually go 6 months or 3 years, Randy, I got to be honest. But
I don't want to either.
Yeah. But my point is, I tend to, because of the lifestyle we lead and we're traveling a lot, it tends to be a little bit faster, but we've learned it's better when you take total time to do exactly what Randy's telling you. Listen first. I didn't listen the other day, and it cost me somebody that I think could have been pretty good. So listen first when you're actually talking to the people. Don't rush the process. I know that's not exactly where you were on this, but it sticks really true, Randy. Don't rush the process. Complete the steps, just like he's saying. Complete them. Take your time. People let down their wall of, no, it's another one of those. The more you get to converse, the more you get to talk, it actually works. Randy, it's your night.
Thank you. I want to hear from your wife, Sue.
Well, in the past, Bill and I had both, we had built a business when we were building our home, and we had 6 kids, and every time we ran into people, we wanted their services, but they wanted what we had. So it was a trade-off, and that network piece works fabulous. So
what you were saying, Randy, regarding,
yeah.
I'm going to find somebody that I can communicate with effectively and have a conversation with before I spend my money there.
Yeah.
That it should be a two-way street.
Yeah.
Business owners should support business owners. And I'm a little more critical because I'm not afraid to say that up front.
Yeah, he used to say that up front.
I used to say it up front, really.
Okay.
She stopped me from doing it.
Okay, so Janet Metzger just chimed in with a text. And so Janet, I'm just going to ask you to unmute and turn on your camera. Janet's been around the industry for a long time. She's brand new to Kannaway, but she knows the industry really, really well. So Janet, just tell me your thoughts on anything that's happening tonight.
This is so fundamental. You know, I'm going back to the day when I worked at the corporate level, but I was in the field. And I never did any shopping unless I was working. And, you know, for those of us that do the grocery shopping, I would go to 4 or 5 grocery stores in a day, all over the place, bring a cooler with me. And that's how I met people. So it absolutely does work. And I think I'm trying to remember who used to say this. I can't remember her name, but she'd always say, you do your business alongside your life. And it's so spot on. My comment to me is, you know, the good news is that we want to close. The bad news is that we want to close. So I have to learn how to, it's always that bridge of the going back. So I do have a question for you, Randy.
Fire away.
So King, I get, you met him and you had that good conversation. do you get his name and number, or do you just go back to that store?
So in my case, if it is a man, because I'm a man, if it is a man and I'm a man, then it's not uncomfortable at all to say, hey, you know, I've enjoyed our conversation. What's your cell phone number? And I'll put it down. If it's a woman, I don't do that. Even if I've shown the picture of Samantha, I don't do it. I make the note and I stop back. Because I mean, it's just society is what society is.
No, it is. I understand. I understand.
Right. And so I think that, you know, kind of keep it to gender, keeping it same gender, getting a telephone number is fine. When you cross genders, then for me, I think that's going backwards. You know, the person doesn't know me. And, you know, it's like.
So to bridge over to that, and is it, I would just love to stay in contact with you, or?
Nope, I don't say a darn thing. What happens, Janet, is like in the case of King or anybody else, I've said the same words with very little difference so many times. Thank you. Your service was exceptional. And by the way, King, I think you're underemployed. That's what I say. And then I
like that.
But not the big one.
thank you so much. I think it's exceptional. And by the way, King, I think you're underemployed. And then I don't say anything else because you know what? He is going to remember me from now on because nobody else told him that. His boss didn't tell him that. The other people that he's been selling things to didn't tell him that. As I say, you're underemployed. And then I make a note. And I go back 6 weeks later, 8 weeks later, 12 weeks later. It's why it works. You know, Janet, I've not been able to get you off my mind. I remember the look in your eyes when you told me how much you'd like to build the petting zoo. See, that has a lot more weight if I came back to see you 6 weeks later than if I, you know, tried to spill something on you the second that I saw you. It's not the same at all, is it? It's a very different thing. And so that's why for me, again, some people I think are discouraged when they hear this, but the average length of time between when I make a contact and when somebody joins me is 70 days. The average lifespan of a network marketing distributor is less than 70 days. They contact their 10 or 12 low-hanging fruit who don't jump all over themselves to get involved and they disappear. I mean, the people that I'm enrolling now are by and large people that I contacted at least a year ago, most. And if every once in a while somebody joins me immediately, well, that was just dead blind luck of the draw. I happened to find somebody whose personal timing was exactly right now. Didn't have anything to do with me. I mean, you were an example of that. Your personal timing was exactly right. And you know, had I contacted you, had you and I talked 60 days earlier, wouldn't have mattered what the conversation was. So no. It's all about identifying that individual's personal timing or being patient enough to allow that timing to evidence itself. And that works. And that works if we're steady, consistent, a daily behavior.
Boringly consistent. That's what you have to do.
Boringly, crushingly, boringly consistent. Billy. Oops, you're unmuted. Got to unmute again, Billy. I'm asking you to unmute. There we go.
Okay, I want to share something, if I may, Randy.
Please.
With what we're talking about, and you hit it on the head because a lot of times you're right. It's out of place for me to walk up and tell a woman, even though I've had a conversation with her, can I get your phone number? Can I do this? Can I do that? That's so out of bounds for me. So what I will show you, and I don't know if you can see it, but these are cards that Sue has made up for me. They're placard cards.
That's awesome.
And what they have is after I talk to somebody and we hand out, I'm going to tell you probably 50 of these a month. Easy, easy. But it's after a conversation. It's just, hey, you know, and we've had a conversation, you have a little bit of interest, but you know what? I'd like you to take a look at this. And each one of these takes them to the video I want them to see. Good. And then it also has a way to contact us. And we've taken the asking for phone numbers from inappropriate places. Randy, that's really important. And if men didn't hear you say that, say it louder. Yeah. Because you can lose somebody that will never talk to you again because you've done that. Right. So that's all I wanted to share. And each one of them has a little barcode that just takes you right after you watch the video. Right. It'll give you an opportunity to call Sue or me. Right. And it's that simple. I mean, that's how we kind of overcame that with our own way. And we do get a lot of response back from these, just to let you know. That's all I wanted to share.
I like it. Thank you. So now, guys, let me just illustrate this. Okay, so what Billy just described was something slightly different than what I do. It might be better than what I do. I don't know. It was slightly different than what I do. But that's an example of what I was talking about, where, see, we're both on the same highway. Now, in that particular instance, I'm in this lane right here. And the lane that I'm in over here, the reason that I'm in it is because my own experience has been that if I, upon the point of contact, let the person know they're my prospect, then that in many respects invalidated my compliment. If I compliment them and don't tell them anything about my business at all, then that compliment has more weight. That's my opinion. And so that's why I don't do what Billy just described. But what Billy just described works for Billy and Sue. And it may very well make it happen a little more quickly. There's also a part of this, however, that is lifestyle, a big part of this different strategy. And by the way, I like the strategy. I'm not, don't anybody say, oh my gosh, Billy had a great idea and Randy Chris. No, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a wonderful idea. Slightly different than what I do. Maybe one day, it's pretty soon, if you hear me teaching that that was my idea, you'll know I tried it, it worked. But well,
also, Randy.
Yeah.
Am I unmuted still?
No, you're unmuted. Yeah.
Okay. The reason we do that, it's Randy, and I tried to describe that initially. We have a different lifestyle. We don't
Absolutely.
have one location we live in.
Of course,
We
that was
travel,
exactly
our coach, and
right.
have for almost 6 years now.
Exactly.
So that's the reason we had to kind of formulate a different way.
100%.
And we did. And we've been doing it that way for quite some time. Does it always work? Of course not. Does it work on you know, enough that we keep doing it? Yeah, it does. But we still do our best to take the steps slowly.
Of course.
Like I'm in Texas. I met somebody when I got here in Texas, when I got home. Well, now I'm supposed to be meeting with them on Tuesday of next week. That took 3 weeks for me.
Right.
So you're right. I was just trying to give a little insight to, Randy did make the comment, there are different ways to do it,
Absolutely.
but you don't know unless you try it. But I always tell people, try it the way Randy's describing it, always first, because we use his way. I've done my best to do what he's doing.
Right.
We just have to do certain things because we're here for a week. Oh, sorry. Now we're in Washington.
Exactly.
Oop, now we're in Oregon. There you go. You can mute me.
No, you just said the exact same thing that I was going to say. Billy and Sue are doing what is doable for Billy and Sue. It's not doable for Billy and Sue to stop back and see King 3 weeks from now. They don't live there, right? So if I was in a coach, then I would have to modify my behaviors to meet that living experience. And so we all have to know, when I teach you that there's a proven, predictable pattern of activities, there's exactly nothing Billy just described that is outside the pattern. This was simply making the pattern fit his life. And folks, you need to understand this. All of you can make the pattern fit your life. It's when we take people and try to cause them to change their life to fit the pattern, that's where we lose. No. Right. We have to make the pattern fit the person's life. And Billy and Sue just described an exact perfect example of that. Not a contradiction to anything that I teach. And what Billy just described doesn't require a disclaimer, do what Randy says first. No, you are doing what Randy says within the context of making the pattern fit your life. Okay. So folks, our time is spent. This is a really, really important concept. I'm not completely sure that I'll move on to the next concept next week. We may have some more of this, because if more people learned how to have a candidate list that became available, more people would enroll enough to find those who will stick. When we don't have a large, valid, and growing candidate list, we only enroll a few, and we wind up trying to drag them to places that we want them to go instead of helping them go where they want to go. And it stops being fun, and it becomes a complete, total life suck. Okay. Everybody, that's it for tonight. I appreciate you all. I think you're great. And all of you, please know if I can help you in any way I want to. Okay. See you all, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
It's a good call.